welcome back. I hope you had a wonderful, restful, relaxing weekend, that your plants enjoyed all the rain, and that you're back ready to go successfully. I'm very excited that today we're going to spend the next hour or so talking about assessment, which you may think, yay, or if you're like me, or really? If you're not yet on the cool assessment train, but I bet you will be by the end of the hour. So we're really, I'm looking forward to our discussion, but more importantly to future discussions at the college around how we can really make an impact on student learning and our own way of working, just simply by assessing what we're doing and then making improvements along the way to continuously do better jobs. So with that, I'm going to pause here. I'm going to thank and preemptively and introduce Julie Morrison and Roxanne, I'm going to say this correctly, Alexander Arnston. All right, I'm learning, slowly but learning, who are Director and Assistant Director, respectively, of assessment here. And on behalf of them and the whole CART team, they're going to get the ball rolling, and then I will jump back in just a few minutes. So, ladies, welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming in the room or online. I'm hoping we have a bunch of people online. And for those of you who came online or in the room, you're doing part of Spring Assessment Week right now. And everybody else is going to have to, or not have to, but we're going to be encouraging them to watch the recording of this. But welcome to today's college conversation, Assessment Visionaries, focusing on student learning improvement. And that was very intentionally titled because we are looking for sort of the vision that we're going to have coming. You're going to hear our president speak to that partway through this presentation, and that discussion of student learning improvement. Obviously, whenever we think about assessment, the whole goal of assessment is always to improve student learning. But sometimes I think we tend to get into a point where we simply are assessing learning, but not doing anything with it. So one of the things you're going to hear us talking about today is how do we really move this work forward? So that's just a little bit on the title. Roxanne and I will be tag teaming this, so you're going to be watching us hand the mic back and forth. But we are here on behalf of our full assessment team. One moment. There we go. So we just want to share a little bit about the assessment team. We have a very, very strong assessment team here at GCC. So we have what we call our leadership team. These are faculty and reassigned time positions. So it's myself as assessment director. This is year 7 for me. Lucky seven, sure, lucky 7. And then Roxanne in year 1 as assessment director, and I'll have you say a little bit about yourself too in a moment. We then have a number of assessment developers who support the work of the college. Then we have our assessment team, our college assessment and review team membership. So we have representation from academic affairs, from student affairs, both enrollment services and student life. We have a CTLE representative, we have an IE representative, and then we have faculty on the committee. We're hoping for a few more staff on the committee, and Roxanne's been great about recruiting some students for our committee as well. In addition to the CART team, we also have kind of 2 support teams, our department assessment coordinators, as well as, when this has been changing over the time, our current name is our co-curricular assessment champions. We're still kind of in the progress of developing that. But what would you like to say about the assessment team?
It takes a village. It's all of us working together, and it's awesome to have different viewpoints and perspectives from across the college. So we'd love to hear your voice as well. If we don't get a chance to hear it as much, it can be filtered through one of the other channels, like our department assessment coordinators, our champions, or CART representatives, but you can also reach out directly to us.
And for faculty, committee assignments are going to be coming up soon. So if you want to join CART, feel free. We'll also talk a little bit more about potentially assessment developers later today. But where we want to start before we invite our president up here is to answer this question. I was in a wonderful assessment presentation where it was a Saturday. I was sitting there, remote, and they came on and they said, are you wondering, is this going to be worth it? And I was thinking, I'm exactly wondering, is this gonna work it? They're like, are you wondering what you're gonna learn, why you're taking your Saturday to be here, kind of what the point is, what the connection is, what you're gonna walk away with this from? And I'm thinking like, yeah, that's all this stuff that I'm thinking, even though this is an assessment conference and I wanted to come. And then they said, and this was really an eye-opening moment for me, that is what your students think every time they're in front of you. And this would be true for faculty in the classroom. This would be true for staff interacting with students. Like, what am I getting out of this experience? And certainly we have our course assessment outcomes or our course learning outcomes, and we have program learning outcomes, we have gen ed learning outcomes, and we have all these things that we want students to accomplish, but we may not be communicating that with them as much. So one of the things we want to be doing here today is to explain to you all, why should you care about assessment? What's the value of it? Some of you may know this already, but we want to spend a little bit of time thinking about that. So we have been very busy and very focused through our strategic planning and other things on a set of really critically important features of our student success or metrics. And so what we want to talk a little bit about is how do these things relate specifically to assessment? So I think we would all agree that these things, retention, persistence, graduation, transfer employment, equity, are very critical to our mission here at GCC. So when we think about retention and persistence, we need to be thinking a little bit about how are we ensuring that students are engaging in improved learning in whatever spaces they're in. So if they are not learning, then they're not going to be successful. And for example, we know from our institutional learning outcome data that some of the gaps we see in persistence and retention are echoed in the learning data that we see as well. So assessment and student learning improvement is an area where we can focus on that. Certainly at graduation, our goal is to ensure that we are sending students out prepared for the work that they're going to be doing, whether it is in a job, whether it is in the space of a transfer. And so the question becomes, are they leaving us prepared? And how do we know they're leaving us prepared? So we're saying, you're getting key things with us. How can we demonstrate to our community and to our students that that in fact is happening? Then of course, thinking again, related to graduation with transfer employment success, one of the things that our CTE areas do really, really well is they connect with their advisory boards and they identify whether, the needs of our community partners are being met. So there's spaces that we can be doing that better, looking at our transfer partners, looking at other community partners, what is it you need our students to provide so that we can work on providing those outcomes. And then lastly, equity. We have had a real mission here of trying to close our equity gaps. And we see, again, those equity gaps in our student learning data. And so how can we use assessment to help address some of those equity gaps? Are there things on this point you would like to say?
Absolutely. So assessment isn't just a form that we fill out once a year or once every 3 years. Assessment is vitally linked to all of these key components. So when we look at each of these areas, these major goals of our college, we won't know if we're meeting these goals. We won't know if we're even close if we're not assessing. So it is important, and this shows us the why. This gives us a little bit more of that insight.
And if that's not enough for you to think that all of these things that are critical to our mission can be supported through the work of student learning outcome assessment, let's talk about compliance. I do like to use the way that Jake Armand talks about this, that compliance is about doing what's right. We don't want to be wielding HLC as a threat or anything else, but the reality is the reason that HLC and every other accreditor values assessment so much is because that's what's right for our students. It's the way we can figure out if we're meeting their needs, and if we aren't, do it better. So I realize that this is teeny tiny, and I'm not expecting you to be reading what's on the screen, but it's more of a visual of the point that we're making. When we look at all of the criteria in our last reaffirmation report, These are the ones that relate to assessment. So let me check. So there are 18 sort of different criteria. 6 of them, so 33% of them in our assessment report or in our reaffirmation report were directly answered in part through assessment work. And those are the ones that are in bold. An additional, where is that number? It's a little dark in here. Additional 10 of the 18 have information in them that is related to this work. So when you look at what HLC is expecting, what our accreditors expecting, so what the Department of Education is expecting, approximately half of the things we need to address relate to student learning success and the assessment work. And so if you needed more of a reason to think through why this is valuable, well, then you can think about accreditation.
Yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. And one of the things we're going to be talking about is the areas that we're going to be speaking about related that are our upcoming focus or foci in assessment are ones that HLC has identified to us as areas of needed strengthening. All right. So what is a learning outcome? You probably know what a learning outcome is, but here we go. One of the things that we have said through assessment that is on our Gaucho site and other places is with every student learning outcome we set, we're making a commitment to students about what they'll know, think, or be able to do when they leave GCC. So we are committing things to students. And what assessment is doing is ensuring that we are meeting this commitment to the best of our ability. You'll notice after the word assessment in quotes, it says to sit beside. That is the Latin root of the word assessment, and really it means to sit beside the student and coach them.
Yeah, so our learning outcomes, it seems like something that's so foundational and basic for most of faculty, and we're here for the students to benefit learning for the students. But going back to those foundations, kind of going back to these roots, as Tiffany said, we're getting beautiful rain right now and seeing the products of that rain. Sometimes we need to go back and see what we planted and if that plant is flourishing. And by going back to our SLOs and looking at those requirements and then seeing how they're working, and then also sharing that information with students, even taking a moment to look back and say, remember when you thought we'd never be able to do an 8-minute persuasive speech? Look at you doing an 8-minute persuasive speech. So from the comm department, that would be a learning outcome that's helpful for me to go back and check for myself and for the students.
And of course, our learning outcomes guide all the work we do on the academic side, but they certainly guide all the work that's happening in our co-curricular spaces. All of our faculty and staff know what they want students to be able to do. And by thinking through this, it's just a way of saying, all right, here's where we want you to go. And let's make sure that we're getting you there and in conversation with students about this. Now, I am wearing my standard Get Your Assess in Gear shirt. And if you've been to any convocations, I talk about this a lot, but I'm going to put it up one more time. GEAR is an acronym, and it's the way that I like to think about the value of this work that ties together a lot of the things that we've been saying so far. So the G stands for goal. Our students come here with a goal. They want to get a better job. They want to transfer. They want career advancement. So they know why they're here. And when they're here, we work with them in 2 different ways to help them meet that goal. So the E stands for engagement. That's kind of our co-curricular assessment, thinking about how do they learn outside the classroom? What education are they being provided in student affairs and other spaces that supplements their learning? Then they learn, of course, in the academic spaces, in our courses and academic programs. And the goal of all of this is for them to be able to articulate, on their resumes, here's what I've learned, here's what I can do as a result of my experience at GCC, and this is why you want me in this job, in this advanced program, and whatever it is they want to do. And I think that we are very good at GCC at giving them these great engagement experiences and giving them great academic programs. but I do think we could be strengthened in how we help them articulate those skills. For example, I was in a presentation around research methods in psychology, and the faculty member said, here's the language I give to students after the class so they can put on their resume about the skills they developed in this class. I know we're talking about micro-credentials. You know, how do we provide students potentially with a micro-credential that demonstrates to our community that they have a skill set that they can, describe, they can be proud of, and they can utilize wherever they're going. So don't ever forget, get your assessment gear. And I do think this is thanks to Karen Bird, who's in the audience over here. Love this.
Yeah, I think Julie summed it up really well. Our gear is an oldie but a goodie. We bring it up because it's a great way for us to measure our progress in assessment. And like a gear is round and goes around in a cycle, so does assessment. When we look at students' goals, sometimes they don't know what their goal is when they come in. Their goals might change as they're here. So we continue to sit beside them, to hold them accountable and to share our knowledge with them and different opportunities with them and to support them in so many ways, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. And then we help them get that resume, get that transcript, and take that next step.
Where this presentation originated was something that we brought to the administration collaboration team to talk about where we were going. Because in assessment, we have some clear ideas of where we need to go. HLC has given us some suggestions of where we need to go. And some of these places we need to go require investments, time, resources, thought, strategy, and all of that. So the big presentation that you just heard was essentially what we provided to ACT, to kind of say, if you're thinking about persistence and graduation and all of these things, here's where it ties into this work. And following kind of that introduction, what we said to the ACT team was, so what we need to know is what are the college's priorities. We realize there are so many priorities that are competing all of the time. And in order for us to do our work, we just need to know where we fall within the college priorities, because how we determine what the next steps are just really depends on what the investment is going to be. And so on that note, we are now going to turn it over to our college president, who is going to talk about her assessment journey and also where she sees the college priorities going specifically for GCC. And we've asked her to actually spend a decent amount of time addressing this, because then it's going to relate to what happens when we come back and talk a little bit more.